Welcome to Chaos Divided, a podcast exploring the hobby, the game, and the lore of Warhammer 40k. We're your hosts, Nurgle, Snurgle, and BlushingNoiseMarine.
Ooh.
And today we're talking about how 40k can be self-care, because in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, there is only wellness. Now, I think when anyone thinks of Warhammer 40k, they don't immediately think of self-care, but there's more to the hobby than just bolters and bloodshed. From playing the game itself, to modeling and painting, to exploring the lore, there's many different ways to get lost in the totality of what we call Warhammer. Now, to bring in my co-host, to Nurgle Snurgle, I gotta ask, how do you approach Warhammer in a therapeutic way?
It's just, I don't know if I come to it like an approach, but I feel like it's what I take away from it afterwards that makes it therapeutic. Obviously, like we can feel our low times and we can feel how we do, and then it's just something about sitting down and feeling peaceful, putting on that podcast, putting on that song, getting into that groove, and for an hour or two it's like everything just drifts away, and then afterwards that's where the real therapy comes in, and that's what I take away from it.
So as part of, to maybe give it a bit of an approach, so is there, kind of a setting the scene? Like, do you light some candles and, put on the podcast, or like, how do you kind
Get the
of,
mood music on?
right? How do you get into that kind of relaxation point?
That's actually, now that you put it like that, yeah, like there's definitely, the way that I approach it is I like to have a clean desk. I like to have my wet palette set up, and even getting your clean cup of water, your brushes set, you pick the paints that you're gonna collect and put them on your desk, and you look at which models you're gonna paint up. That's therapeutic right there. Just getting the nice setup together, and obviously it's not always gonna be peaceful and looks aesthetically pleasing, like you're gonna have like your desk all bunched up, but sometimes I like that clean slate, and that's my preferred approach to it.
Now I'm thinking about my own painting space and how I never clean it up ever? And it's still never.
Oh,
and
wow.
How it's covered in like half painted models and like just paints everywhere in no particular order.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's why I don't find painting as relaxing as other people do.
Well, my computer desk is my painting desk at the same time, so I have to, it can get kind of bothersome when I have to, like, when there's just too much stuff on my desk. So but I like to film, so filming my process helped having a cleaner desk, because like I want it to look nice, and especially through like filming it, it gives me that push to clean. Now, if I look at Blood God's painting station, sometimes it's just like blood, or blood, of course, paint splatter everywhere.
I mean, that feels very corny, so that feels right, you know? I mean,
he wanted to paint on my paint station the other day, and I was like, you can't.
I mean, when you think of Nurgle's garden, you don't always think organized, but there's probably a method to the madness, so that makes sense.
Oh, there's lots of organization. Like, I know a lot of people think it's like, ew, disgusting, gross, but if you really look at the root of it all, pun intended, it's very organized. Like, Nurgle loves organization. Everything has to be in the cycle of sevens, and they have to keep count and make sure that everything is in place.
I mean, if you really dig into Nurgle, he's actually supposed to be like the god of like life and like renewal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the Eldar and orcs that kind of, mess that up for everyone else. So yeah, I guess if you look at it from like a life's perspective, then, there's a lot of like organization and like thought in that. So you're just extolling the virtues of Nurgle.
Yep. We embody the saying, don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah, no, mine's just all chaos and all disaster all the time. But yet I still find ways to kind of like get lost in it. Like, not so much like smaller miniatures painting. I struggle with like, especially like Chaos Space Marines. It's all trim, and I just
Mm,
it's a struggle
mm-hmm,
for me.
mm-hmm.
But like painting vehicles, could just like I feel like if I was 40 years older, I would probably make like model airplanes,
Mm,
because it's like more of that, like, I find that more of the like, okay, I don't have to be as like specific.
meticulous. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
like,
I I follow you like through the commission painting that I've done, especially with deck box and doing knights and like a Lord of Skulls and stuff like that. Painting the big models is a lot of fun. Like you don't have to be tight in there with your magnifying glass trying to get that dotted eye. No, 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 no. You just take a big brush, bash some paint on it, and you are good to go. Meanwhile, like I just painted some 8 bound at the moment, 24 of them, and the trim is like ungodly.
that's a big project.
Huge.
24 A bound. That
Yeah.
is, and this like World Eaters, especially the red and the gold, like blend in your eye so much, like keeping them
Mm-hmm.
straight. That's
Mm-hmm.
no, thank you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I put a lot of gold trim on little purple soldiers, but
Mm-hmm.
there's at least like visually a distinction there.
Yeah.
World Eaters is something else.
I've always said like as like I just joked about it the other day with my fiance Blood God that if you're a commission painter, you should mark up the price for Chaos Marines because it's not just the trim like a nice solid piece like most Space Marines. It's got that little tick on it. It's got like this little arrow. It's insane.
The amount, like the Terminators, especially the amount of
Mm-hmm.
just like framing and bracing and like little bits, and like I saw the like the new Terminators, like
Mm-hmm.
they're so clean, like they've got that hunched like Terminator
Yeah.
look to them, and then like Chaos Space Marines are just like all weird angles and detail, and like they're
Mm-hmm.
brutal.
And
I
not only that, there's tentacles. There's like spikes coming out. There's something going on with the armor that's yeah, it's but you know what? I wouldn't change it for the world.
No, I mean Possessor. I do actually kind of enjoy Possessed because it's like you have all the detail, but then also you have the like demonic parts coming out,
Mm-hmm.
and like it almost frees you a little bit. You're like, you know what? They're kind of half demon. They don't have to look as clean. Like,
Mm-hmm. It's like a breath
you know,
taker. Yeah, it's like
yeah. You're like, and the colors don't have to make as much sense. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
can put colors that clash because, well, at least if I
Mm-hmm.
didn't give it away from the name, I am an Emperor's Children fan. So like, they can be a little messy. They can be a
Mm-hmm.
little garish, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, that got us started, but when we look at the hobby as a whole, there's obviously a social element to all of this. There's the solitary element, so painting is kind of the obvious one. Um, how do you kind of compare those experiences? The playing with someone, or the hobby kind of with a group, or more socially versus kind of that like tucked into your little nook.
I think it's a perfect balance between the two. Of course, we're humans. We love to be social. Like as much as like people love to say that they're introverts, we need social interaction. And painting doesn't have to be just solitaire. Like you can have a buddy night. Like some of my most favorite times is painting with someone next to me and it's it's crazy how time can fly by and you're like, whoa, I just painted half a model, a full model, and chit-chatting with somebody next to me. It's glorious. So I think that there's, especially in this hobby and Warhammer, there is, and you're gonna hear a lot of how unbalanced the game is, but Warhammer, like as a whole, is pretty balanced. It's you can choose whatever way you want. If you want to game, if you want to paint, if you want to just build, if you want to just talk lore, like there's just so many aspects of it. It's wonderful.
I was thinking about it today, and really, like, there's multiple pillars that kind of make up the
Yes.
hobby as a whole, and like, you really kind of can like pick and choose. Like for a very long time, like the lore was kind of my connection to the hobby. I didn't have time to game, I didn't have time to paint. But like reading the Horus Heresy novels was kind of the way I kept connected to Warhammer. So you really can have kind of that, like, you can kind of have it on your own, you can have it in a group, and honestly, you always kind of know you're talking to somebody who's into Warhammer, because as soon as you say like anything, and they're just like, "What did you just say?"
Yeah.
And it's like instantly you're just like into it. So no, I think that social element is for me and maybe for you. Like I think that's a huge component of it. Like you might work on it alone at home, but then you bring those experiences and that expression with you.
And like, I've known of Warhammer for 10 plus years because of Blood God, but I would say that I've been in it for about 5 years now, under 5 years. And even now, like when we talk about social and social media and that social connection, it has grown exponentially. Like it's unbelievable where it's blown up into. I would say that we're in like the golden age right now. Like it's starting to, like, it's like the Big Bang right now.
I like to think that there's, I look at what's happened with like D&D, and I think Warhammer's right on the cusp of that kind of like mainstream recognition, where it goes from kind of being that like, oh, what's that weird thing going on over there, to like, people are just like openly talking about it, and it I guess kind of the like getting it out of the basement almost, like that, like
true,
where people are just like know things about it. And I mean, I feel like we all kind of owe Henry Cavill maybe a little bit of a thank you for making Warhammer a little bit more cool. But
100%. Well, like I think most people, well, like say for when I started, it was, what's Warhammer? Now it's, oh, I know somebody that does Warhammer. Oh, I used to do Warhammer when I was younger. Or, oh, I know somebody that paints Warhammer. So it's now slowly building that connection.
And I think people are seeing kind of the value of it as a hobby that you can really kind of set your commitment to. Like, you can be that very intense competitive player who like, spends their weekends in tournaments, or you can be someone who like picks it up and paints a model and, reads a book and puts it back down for 3 months, and it's all okay.
Yep. And I love that it's not forced into anything. Like you can marry the two, the game and the hobby, or you don't have to. It doesn't matter. No one's gonna judge you. Oh, you just paint or you just game? No. It's none of that.
I mean, if you play the game and you're as bad at painting as I am, there is a little bit of a like, oh, really? But
no.
No. No, and that, but it's true. There's so little judgment I've found in the broader community, and you can see it even on social media. Just like it really feels like a kind of a warm, welcoming place.
Yeah.
For people to kind of figure out how they want their hobby to feel, which I think is really beautiful. So we kind of talked about, painting is usually solo. It can be a lot of fun socially. But really, painting is kind of where that self-expression, painting a miniature is art. So how does painting allow you to express yourself?
So I've always been an artistic person, and I guess it just came natural to me. So I never really thought too much about it, or even when I first started, they'd be like, oh my God, that's amazing. And as an artist, like we are very self-critical of ourselves, but especially this hobby has helped me to understand that artisticness of myself and accept it, and understand that I love color. I love expressing in color. Like, color is beautiful, and it doesn't have, like, I understand that people are colorblind as well. Like, I hear that a lot. Like, people want to paint, but they're colorblind. But there's more than just the color to color. There's the tones. There's like it, whether it's warm or it's cold, or the textures or the techniques that you take with the color that can be so expressive. Like, there's so many possibilities that you can approach this art, and however you put together, or whatever colors you smash together, is you. And it's beautiful. Like, when I was younger, there was this book I was given by my grade 1 teacher, and I still hold it dear to my heart. And it was about this mouse who got this colorful paint palette for his birthday, and he just goes around the town and painting scarves, and he's painting gloves for the town folk, and it brought such joy to them. And I always kept that close to my heart, because that's how I see art. If you can make someone smile, if you can invoke an emotion like that, it's so powerful. And that's how I see the art with Warhammer. It's power.
I absolutely love that, because I think there is so much room to express yourself, and really, like, within totality of the hobby. And I was just thinking, what you said about somebody being colorblind, like, what's beautiful to you is there's room for that. Like, it's about expressing what you view as beauty. You don't paint for other people. You paint to, like, for yourself, for your expression. And no matter how artistic you feel you are, there's room for all of that expression. I've been somewhat joking, I am not the best painter, but I still, there are moments when I get something to look better than I thought I could, or there's moments where it just comes together and you're like, you know what, I like the way that looks, and I did that. And I probably wouldn't be able to do that in any other medium, but part of it is, like, you're already so invested in what that miniature is and what it represents, and the lore and the whole hobby, that it's kind of like, it pushes you, I think, to, like, get that expression out of yourself, regardless of what you feel is like, okay, am I actually good at this or not? It doesn't matter. It's do I enjoy this, and can I, like, can I get how I feel out of me through this little plastic thing?
Yeah. And I've even looked at my models as like little journals, like little timelines. Like, I was this person when I painted this, and I was this old, and this is how I felt when I painted that. Sometimes, like I said, artists, very critical, and sometimes I'll look at a piece and not like it. But then, like, months down the road, I'll look at it and be like, man, what was I thinking at the time? I love it. Like, I love that it's finished. I love that it's like, you start to really appreciate the beauty in it, even afterwards.
Well, it's almost like once you have a little bit of distance from the actual painting of it, you can see it the way everyone else sees it.
Yes, I feel, you are so correct in that. Like, there is something about, like, being so into a model where that's all you see for 8 hours of the day. Yeah, you're gonna go blind, essentially. And then when you take a step back, it's like, oh, when you take that breath of fresh air, it's peaceful.
Well, and it's even, we're talking about kind of painting a single miniature, but and you're playing like a 2,000 point game, and you put everything out there, and you kind of get to see what it all looks like and how unique it all looks. And you almost kind of have that little bit of like remembrance of the time you spent on it, kind of each time you're like doing a deployment. Because you're kind of like, oh, you know what, I remember painting this, or I remember, putting this together and, being frustrated because I couldn't figure out like where this part went. And then when I figured it out, it was great. Like it transcends any one part. And I think that having that expressive component translate past just like the painting and building of the miniature is part of what makes Warhammer so unique.
Yeah. It'd be interesting, like, if grandmasters had to paint their own chess pieces. And that's how I kind of see them as. Like, I see these as like chess pieces, your kings, your queens, your pawns, with your own spin and uniqueness. And everyone's unique. Like, there's never going to be one model that's the same, or one army that's the same that each person has.
Well, and I think when you look at some of like Warhammer Fantasy was a little bad for this, where so many of the factions kind of had these very predetermined looks and feels to them that there wasn't as much room for expression. And then you compare that with like Sigmar, and what some people have done with that, and like the palettes and the colors that people are putting together. Like Bretonnians were very like, they had a look, and there wasn't a lot of room to get past that, or else stuff started looking weird. Like, it just like, it looked kind of odd, and you started breaking the theme of it. Whereas like, I think 40K especially, like, it's so broad, and I think that brings a lot of the value. Like, if you compare it to some other games where there isn't really that hobby component, I feel like you don't have the same attachment. It's the game that you're playing. It's not really the whole hobby.
Yeah.
Now, this is the part where I get a little excited, because we've both played Warhammer more competitively.
Yes.
I don't know, I would not classify myself as a pro player or even particularly good, but I do enjoy competitive play. And even though it's stressful, I find it actually to be very stress relieving, because it's like a very controlled stress environment. And, for some of you listening, a tournament can sound intimidating, but I feel like there are benefits even in my own head playing like a smaller tournament. How do you kind of feel kind of going through a tournament?
Well, now that I've played tournaments for a couple years, I can definitely say that my approach is so different from the beginning. Like, in the beginning, it was very stressful for me because I was the only female playing. I just jumped into it. Like, it wasn't like a gradual upcline into tournament play. It was like, oh, there's someone DM me. They're like, there's a GT coming to your city. You should check it out. Sure, let's check it out. Jared, we've never done a tournament. Let's try it out. And I just jumped into a 36-person tournament. Never played a game against a stranger ever before. So that was stressful. But my first game, I fell in love with it, and I understood right then and there that this is what I want to continue doing. But the benefit I saw right away was, definitely the social aspect, the feeling of it. Like, now, like I said, now that I can reflect on it, I take away from these tournaments structure in my life. Like, you have to plan that you're going to a tournament. You have to understand that you have to upload a list a week in advance. It's not something that you can just drop and play. You have to have a list ready, your models ready, your dice packed. Make sure you have a tape measure. Make sure you have all your models. And I'm speaking from experience that sometimes I've missed some of those. And through the repetition, it's, like I said, it's given me that structure that I really needed in my life. And also I've learned just consequences and preparation for it, as well as the adrenaline rush. I've always told people who have never attended tournaments that you're going to either feel completely exhausted and you don't want to pick up another dice, or you're going to feel so much adrenaline, you're going to be like, I want to roll more. Like, let's go round 6, baby.
I mean, there are some tournaments where you feel both, but that's
Yeah.
That's usually when there's too many rounds in a day. And I can 100% relate to that kind of first tournament. I played like fourth, fifth, and sixth editions. Didn't play for over 10 years.
Mm,
And then my first game of ninth edition was the first round of a GT I signed up for.
wow.
And I was just like, you know what? Let's do this. And
Mm-hmm.
I was hooked because it
Yeah.
was stressful. I did terribly. But had so much fun just like working through that, and
Mm-hmm.
really there's not many things where you can just so quickly see kind of like, okay, I shouldn't have done that. And like it's like such a learning and educational environment, and it really
Mm.
challenges you to like think quickly and think in like an organized way and like plan out what you're doing. um, you think, okay, a 3 hour round sounds really long, but it isn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're so hopped up on like, you know, excitement, and like, the first like big roll you get is like a dopamine shot, and then you're just like, your adrenaline's at 10, and then you're like, okay, now I have to make decisions. And
Yeah.
like that back and forth, I find really, it's like I said before, that controlled stress, I find it kind of allows you to disconnect from like all of the day-to-day troubles in your life, and it almost is like a day or two. I haven't played any longer tournaments, but of that, like, okay, I'm so in the moment. And like,
Mm-hmm.
when you look at like mindfulness and you look at like, relaxation techniques, a lot of them coincide with kind of that feeling you
Yes.
get in the middle of a tournament. But instead
Yes.
of being from that like tranquility point, it's like that like intense pressure. And I find it almost gives you a clarity, which
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't really expecting.
Well, even in pressure can make diamonds. So, but I love that you said that mindfulness, because that's key when it comes to meditation. You're not thinking about the past, you're not thinking about the future, you're thinking about the now. And that gets you into this just trance, I guess you could say. And
Hmm.
that's very much like a game. Like you don't know who your opponent is until 5 minutes before you have to get to the table, and then you have to be like, okay, how many characters do you have? What's your secondaries? Like, and uh, when it comes to preparation, like knowing the questions to ask is, I think, is very key. Um, like
Well, it's
obviously,
almost,
yeah. Sorry.
it's all like a cognitive exercise. Like you're
Yes.
like, you have to train yourself how to like process information in like a very short amount of time and make like decisions off of it, which is really
Mm-hmm.
like, if you look at like even like executive training, that's usually what they're like trying to teach people to do, is to
Mm.
like delegate information, process information. Like really, there's like very high functioning skills that come out of Warhammer that like,
Mm-hmm.
probably you could do studies on, because it's really like you're just processing so much information so rapidly, because like you can't know every faction,
Nope.
you can't know every list. So you're just like, okay, I have limited information and I have to make choices on that, and I've got 45 seconds to do it. Go.
Yep.
And you're just in it.
And understanding, like, and being okay with that too, like letting yourself know that like it is okay to not know everything. Like it is okay as long as you know what you can do and what you can counter with. That's the key. And like, yes, you're gonna have opponents that tell you every single thing about their list, but it is also okay to be like, you know what, I'll ask you the questions as I go. Like I'm not going to remember that right now, because right now I'm trying to think of my secondaries.
You're like, I'm on A and you're telling me about something you're going to do like round four. I'm not here for that. But that's part of it. That's building up
Mm-hmm.
that kind of skill set. And
Mm-hmm.
so no, I think there's a huge amount of like things you can learn from that competitive play that you don't necessarily get from more social play, because it pushes you to like almost be more of what more of a player, more of a of a hobbyist. And also looking at kind of a tournament, you're also getting to see usually a bunch of beautiful models, a bunch of beautiful
Mm-hmm.
armies. You're getting to meet new people that approach the game differently. Like there's that whole social element. um, Going to a GT is a great way to just like meet people that are excited about the same thing you're excited about, and I think that's so valuable.
Yep. like I said in the beginning of this question, was that I've changed so much. Like before, I wanted to like I was kind of chasing the ITC numbers. I liked seeing my name on charts. Like that was really cool. I've never seen that before in my life. But now I approach tournaments completely different. Now that I'm more comfortable with my army, and I'm painted, so I'm not staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning the night before. Um, it's all social. It's like I get to see the people I love. I don't get to see that often, or I only get to see 6 months of the year. But when we're there together for the weekend, that's it. Like it's full of love. Like especially in our local community, it's very beautiful. The people we get to meet and those connections.
Well, and because we're in a vaster geographic area, these are people you're not just seeing on like a day-to-day
Mm-hmm.
basis. You're not gonna see somebody at like a Tuesday night, game store
Mm-hmm.
if they got to drive 4 hours. That's just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really a great opportunity to catch up with kind of those old friends.
Yeah.
Um, so no, it's there's a lot there. Now, talking about pillars, I don't think we can talk about Warhammer without talking about the lore. And there's so much of it, the novels, the narrative, even codexes. Arcs of Omen has been huge. How do you kind of fit lore into your hobby?
Uh, so the lore that I consume is fully through Blood God. Like it was actually the lore that started me on the path into Warhammer. He would tell me stories about it, and it started off with talking about Nurgle and talking about the garden, and then the moment he started talking about the Primarchs, I felt such connection to it. Like there's all of these men, I guess, or Primarchs that have these unique powers to themselves, and they have daddy issues, I guess you could say. And I felt like I could connect to that, and you felt almost sadness to for some of these characters. For example, like Angron, like his story is so sad and you feel for them. Or even Mortarion, like how these characters are just thrown across the universe, living in environments that they had no control over, and then they're told that they got to be super soldiers essentially and ripped from their homes. And it was just understanding, like I don't want to go too deep, but like I didn't come from a good environment, so I could have a personal connection with them, and that's how I got more connected to the lore, and that's how I took it. But I'm just starting to read the Horus Heresy books, and I'm loving how well written they are and descriptive. And there is, I find myself now, like I've never was much of a reader, but I'm finding myself reading them. I'm finding myself on the hill in Halifax in the sun, and I'm reading, and the sun's coming down, and I'm like, I gotta finish this chapter. Like, I'm so invested now.
I think that's awesome, and I really like what you're saying about kind of the Primarchs and them. Like they're these superhumans, but then they also have these like very human problems and very like
Mm-hmm.
human fallibilities. And I think I really came to enjoy Warhammer more through reading like the Horus Heresy novels and getting to kind of see almost this interesting kind of thought process of like, okay, you create these like superhumans, and like what is really wrapped around the Horus Heresy especially is like this feeling of like purpose and usefulness. And like, what kind of
Mm-hmm.
starts the whole heresy is, they start wondering like, okay, well, what happens when we finish? And
Mm-hmm.
like, what do you do when you're built for a purpose and that purpose is done? And
Mm-hmm.
those like very human, problems, and like, what do you do when your father doesn't love you, and what do you do when you grow up in a rough environment? Like Angron, especially. Angron is a character study, and like someone who could have been like a loving, caring person. And like, I think it's been said multiple times, like Angron was the most emotional and the most like
he was diplomatic. Like,
yeah,
couldn't he like ease the room if he walked into it? If he could, without the butcher's
yeah.
nails.
Well, and that's like he was like even more humanistic than like Vulcan. Like he was like the one who actually like loved and cared for like the humans around him, and that's what like it was. I think it was actually like when his like friends were killed was like what broke him,
or he couldn't save them.
Yeah. So no, he's like a super like caring character that just like couldn't care enough and breaks, and like that's such a relatable thing. But then you're telling this in the context of something that is now like a 15-foot tall demon. So like it's almost like the escapism allows you to explore your own feelings in relations to things without having to like necessarily feel it yourself. Like it's like an indirect way of kind of like dealing with your own humanity, really. That went way deeper than I was expecting to. I thought we were just going to talk about like
we could go deep.
I mean, that's the whole point of a podcast. We're not done. This is an intro.
Yes, this is just a teaser. Or because I'm a chef, it's an amuse-bouche for the rest.
You know what? Okay, that sounds fancy, but if you like the French part, it is just it's such a weird saying.
Yeah. The amusement of the mouth, that's what it means.
Right? You can make something sound fancy, but you can't take the French out of it. But no, I think like the lore really like gives you that like human application to something that like, there's a guy in Halifax, and like he's just like, we're playing toy soldiers. Like we're all aware that we're playing toy soldiers. Matt, that's a common saying for him. And I think the lore, the hobby adds so much more to the fact that like, yeah, you're just playing like with little plastic army men. But yet you're so connected to this because of these like 40 years of stories that have built up around it.
I actually I never call them toy soldiers. I don't even think of them as toys. I find them as like my art pieces, or like even down to the single Nurgling. Like there's feeling and emotion to them.
But I think that speaks to how powerful it is. And no, I don't call them toy soldiers either. I just was making a joke. But no, it's true. Like it really, I mean, you spend a lot of time. Like even if you're not like a super detailed painter or like hobbyist, like it's still a lot of time to build an army and paint it and get it ready. And, every game you play is like a commitment in some way, shape, or form, and you're putting yourself into that. And I think, it transcends a little bit more than like a dollar store baggie of like GI Joes.
Yeah.
So no, I think there's so many different ways you can come to this in a way that kind of makes your day-to-day life a little bit easier. And, I think going back to that, in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, there is only wellness, because I think, it's such a far removed world. It's such a far removed, like, the lore is so in depth that there's ways for you to find yourself in it in any way, shape, or form. And, from exploring kind of, mindfulness and kind of like your own thought processes through like competitive play, the intricacies of painting, and both socially and on your own. There's so many ways for you to kind of get into this hobby and just feel good about it.
And like, there's one thing I love is seeing others as well connect over it. Like when we're at the GTs and I see others, like it's like speaking a language, and I can see two people talking about their armies and how it plays, and they go da 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 da. I'm just like, wow, that's impressive. And you could just it's not just impressive. You can see the love. Like there's a aura of love with this hobby.
And I think that's, you know, the part that maybe surprises people when they get into it, is that it is this like big labor of love, and it is this
Mm-hmm.
like very caring and compassionate, you know, environment. And, you know, obviously with anything, there's some people that maybe don't take it in that direction. But especially around here, like, you know, I think the community around here is such a positive group that it's hard to feel anything but like, you know, supported it
Mm-hmm.
and you know, excited about the hobby.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So that's brought us to the end. This was supposed to be a 10 to 20 minute trial run, and we're 40 minutes in.
I
So
see.
I think this might have been a little bit more fun than either of us were expecting.
I think we have a lot
Um,
more to say than we thought.
I knew you would have more to say. I think the surprise maybe is on you.
Oh, okay.
Um, I think no, I like if you haven't checked out Snurgle before on social media, everything she does is fantastic. The way she approaches
Thank you.
Warhammer is absolutely incredible and so positive, so loving. You know, you really embrace that like Nurgle is love and Nurgle is joy.
I use a tagline that I like to spread love like it's a disease. It's very contagious.
So no, I definitely knew you'd have a lot of great insight and a lot of great things to talk about.
I had a
I
great
guess before
time.
we,
I can't wait to do more of this.
is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, because I think the element of surprise for the next time is what's the spice of life.
Ooh, the element of surprise. Well, I guess now we're committed to making a second one. Uh, well, for everyone listening, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. You can find Nurgle Snurgle. Is it at Nurgle underscore Snurgle
Yes, yeah.
on Instagram?
If you see Nurgle dot Snurgle, that had to be a backup one. I don't even want to get into it, but yeah, I am Nurgle underscore Snurgle.
And I
Or the
don't
soon
yet
to
have
be
Instagram.
the
The
soon to
soon to be blushing noise marine,
I
because
love
that's
it.
a I secretly do too. And yeah, I hope you join us next time and have a great day.
Yes. Ciao for now.